All right, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Matthew Wright. I am a media specialist at Alberta Agriculture and Forestry and will be the moderator for today's webinar titled Developing a Strategy that is Sustainable. This is the second webinar in the Sustainable Strategic Planning webinar series presented by Brett Wills, President of Green Enterprise Movement. Now, a few things about Brett. He brings over 15 years of experience in sustainable business management, and as a former plant manager, has firsthand experience developing and executing strategies to drive organizational performance. As president of Green Enterprise Movement and director of sustainability for High Performance Solutions, Brett now spends a majority of his time helping organizations accelerate their triple bottom line performance. He has worked with hundreds of organizations across a broad sector of industries, including manufacturing, government, healthcare, retail, and hospitality. Over the past 6 years, Brett has spent a considerable amount of time working with food processors across Canada to enhance their overall performance. He lives in Toronto and is the author of Green Intentions, Creating a Green Value Stream to Compete and Win, published in 2009, and author of Purposely Profitable, Embedding Sustainability into the DNA of Food Processing and Other Businesses, which will be published in early 2016. Brett holds a BA in Economics from Wilfrid Laurier University and has completed postgraduate studies at Dalhousie University. Now, a few notes before I hand things over to Brett. If you have any technical issues with WebEx, send me a chat message and I'll try to sort it out. Now, the chat box is located from the drop-down menu at the top of your screen, and send it to me, the host. Also, we encourage participant interaction, so if you have a question, again, open your chat box, type in your question, and send it to me. At the end of the presentation, during our Q&A session, I will pose the questions to Brett so that all the participants can hear. Now, we're anticipating about 45 minutes for this webinar. I will now turn it over to Brett.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. In respect of everyone's time, we're going to get right into our agenda for today, which is to do a brief review of our first webinar in a three-part series. And this will give folks who attended the previous webinar just a quick refresher on what was covered there, and for folks who are joining us for the first time, it'll give you sort of bring you up to speed on what we covered in the last webinar there. And then we're going to get into building on that first webinar and get into the focus for today's webinar, which is really around, how do we develop a strategy that is sustainable, that's going to drive the success of our business going forward? And that starts by looking at a strategic planning framework that allows us to integrate sustainability into the strategic plan to develop a overall strategy that is sustainable over the long term, but also creates alignment to ensure that everything that we're working on as an organization is adding value to the organization. And then we're going to get it right into the different steps in the process for actually developing a strategy that is sustainable based on the framework that we will have looked at. And then there'll be a few minutes at the end there, as Matt mentioned, for Q&A. So,
Hey, Brett, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just wondering if you could increase your volume a little bit.
Increase the volume? Sure.
Or speak louder.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll speak louder. Is this okay, Matt? Is this good volume now, or?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, man. Yeah, just continuing on here, let's get right into just a very quick review of the first webinar that we had, which was really all around understanding sustainability for the agri-food processors in the agricultural sector. And we started off by looking at a high-level definition of what sustainability is, sort of on a global level, which is really about the ability to meet the needs of today's generation without destroying the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And from there, we distilled that down to more of a definition of sustainable business and how sustainability can be applied to your business in the agri-food processing sector. And really what that comes down to, sustainability from a business perspective, is broken down into three high-level dimensions of social, environmental, and economic. And we really looked at each of those dimensions in turn and what makes up that dimension. On the social side, we saw that it was really a focus on people, partners, and the community, where on the environmental side, we looked at the natural steps, three sets of criteria for what drives environmental sustainability. So that's really the green piece of sustainability, that environmental piece there. And really define, what it really means to go green. And as we saw, there's, a lot of organizations working in that direction, but, very few organizations, if any, that are actually environmentally sustainable today. And then, of course, the economic piece of it is the third dimension of sustainability, which is, what are we doing today to keep our doors open 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now? The economic dimension of sustainability is not necessarily focused on the financials, on profit. It's what are we going to do to drive profit over the long term? And that's where we looked at things like, innovation, agility, and resilience in order to be able to keep our doors open, 50 years into the future. And what we saw was that sustainability, the real trick is how do we balance these three things? And, sustainability has been called many different things, from, just plain sustainability to people, profit, and planet, triple bottom line. And that's what it's really all about, is how do we drive the triple bottom line to improve overall performance? And we saw that while there's a high level sort of, if I can call it a generic definition of sustainable business, every organization will define sustainability differently for themselves based on the material aspects or impacts that they have in each of these areas. So, what are your social impacts, environmental impacts, economic opportunities? And every organization will have different impacts and opportunities, which then results in a different definition of sustainability for their unique business. And with that understanding of, what sustainability is, and more particular, what sustainable business is, we looked at, some of the market trends that are driving organizations to really accelerate and increase their focus on sustainability. Some of those market trends are, from the high level of, resource scarcity and risk management, from things such as, water and drought and climate change and how that's going to affect your business, and things like that, but also, how the market is perceiving this stuff. For an agri-based company, your customers are really starting to grab onto this, and they're really starting to drive this down in the supply chain. So, whether it's the retailers, the grocers, the restaurants, the food service organizations, whatever it may be, their customers are demanding that the products and services that they consume are more sustainable, and therefore it's being driven down into the agri-processing supply chain. So, big market trends there and big drivers there. We also saw that, more and more employees are looking to work for organizations that are moving in this direction, so on and so forth. Apologies for that. And then what we also saw, perhaps, one of the most important aspects of the last webinar was, from a business perspective, why would I want to focus on this stuff? We're busy, we have lots of things to do. Chances are, folks across the organization are wearing many different hats already. Why would we want to put another serving on the plate? Why would we want to do more than we're already doing if it's already hard to keep up? Well, the truth be told is that there is a very strong business case for sustainability. And it starts with the fact that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether, you believe in this climate change stuff or global warming or whatever, people want to call it these days. At the end of the day, if you use less energy, you use less water, you send less waste to the landfill, you can retain and attract more top talent to your organization, you're going to get cost savings, you're going to spend less money, right? So that's a big driver for a lot of organizations. We also saw that employee retention and attraction is a huge driver for many organizations, especially in the Alberta region, where employee retention and attraction can be one of the major challenges that organizations are facing. And sustainability is certainly not the silver bullet solution to that, but it certainly is a driver to help improve in that area. How do we retain and attract our customers? More and more organizations are looking for this. So from a business perspective, if we're not doing this stuff, we may get away with it today, but going forward, it's going to be a prerequisite. It's like the quality movement we talked about, in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't a requirement at first, but today you don't get a ticket to the game. You don't get to submit quotes and proposals if you're not doing this stuff. It's going to be it's going to be a prerequisite. It's going to be an expectation going into the future. And today, it's a competitive advantage. The risk management side of it, and you put all these things together. You spend less money. You have the best talent in your organization. You can retain that talent. You're driving your market share. You're managing your risks. At the end of the day, what that means is that you're going to drive your profit and you're going to drive value for your shareholders. And, we saw, some stats and some graphs and stuff that illustrated that, this isn't just some, blue sky idea. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. The proof is in, looking at organizations who are driven by sustainability and comparing their performance to organizations who aren't necessarily driven by sustainability. And those ones that are driven by sustainability are outperforming those who are not. So, clearly, sustainability is not some trend or fad that's going away. It is something that is here to stay, and there's significant business value in focusing on this. So that then, I'm sure for many of you begs the question, well, great. So, how do we take advantage of this? How do we bring sustainability into our organization? And how do we focus on, making our organization more sustainable? And, that really comes from being able to embed sustainability. A lot of consultants love to use the term embedding it into the DNA of the organization, which really means, how do we make this a part of our daily routine, our daily operations, just part of what we do on a regular basis? Well, that really involves, leveraging a strategic planning model that is designed to integrate sustainability into the overall business strategy. And once sustainability is integrated into the overall business strategy, very quickly, it becomes part of, what we do on a daily basis. And, that's really the focus for today's webinar, is to, have a better understanding of this strategic planning model that integrates sustainability to help us develop a strategy that is sustainable, so that we can make our organizations more successful going forward. Now, the whole basis of this strategic planning model is based on an integrated approach that integrates sustainability into the overall strategic plan. What does that mean? Well, typically, organizations will have a business strategy. Some are more formalized than others. Some are certainly more successful than others. But typically, every organization, regardless of its size, has some sort of strategy for, how they're going to run their operation and how they're going to make their organization successful. And then they come across this thing called sustainability, and they say, wow, this is fantastic. This could really, benefit my business, add value to my business. And the logical next step really is to say, let's develop a sustainability strategy. And many organizations have done this. And while that does work for a short period of time, what really ends up happening here is an organization ends up with two siloed strategies. And typically, the business strategy is driven by the business owners, the executive team, the senior management, whereas the sustainability strategy sort of becomes this bolted on or added on sort of piece that is typically managed or driven by an individual or a team of, a small team of individuals. And therefore, it doesn't get the attention that it needs. It doesn't get the focus and the resources that it needs. It doesn't become fully, part of what the organization does. And therefore, the benefits that are realized from this approach are very limited and tend to sort of, peter out after a short period of time. What this approach does is it really takes the business strategy and sustainability, it brings the two together to develop a strategy that is sustainable. So very sort of subtle, change in the words from a sustainability strategy to a strategy that is sustainable, but it's a world of difference between the two. We don't want to be developing two strategies. We want to develop one strategy that incorporates sustainability. So the next question becomes, well, how do we do this? Well, the first step is having a strategic framework that allows for the integration of sustainability into the strategic plan. But beyond that, also provides focus and alignment to a common vision of the future of what the organization wants to be. Again, what does that mean? Well, typically on the left-hand side of your screen here is what a typical strategic plan looks like for, a traditional organization where, there's some key areas that are being focused on to drive the organization forward. There's some aspects of sustainability in there. In today's world, most organizations are doing something for the environment, whether it's, maybe a cleanup on Earth Day or, some very small token initiative. Typically organizations are doing something, on the social side, maybe it's, doing something for their employees, so on and so forth. But, what often happens is, first of all, organizations leave some gaps in their strategy with regard to sustainability. So they don't cover all three dimensions of sustainability. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's no talk about community there. There's no focus on community, right? So, a piece of sustainability has been left out. And anytime you leave one of those dimensions out of your strategic plan, you're leaving, potentially money on the table, value on the table. So you want to make sure that sustainability, all three dimensions are integrated in the strategy. So this framework ensures that you not only are focused on sustainability, you've captured and you're focused on all three dimensions of sustainability. The second piece of value that this model provides is that it focuses and it aligns efforts towards a future vision of success. So as you can see, the key focus areas on the left-hand side, employees, serving our customers, partner relationships, those things that are, critical to the success of the organization going forward are there, but not necessarily aligned to what the organization is trying to achieve long-term. And, having worked with hundreds, perhaps thousands of organizations over, a number of years, I see this all the time. People are busy running around doing all kinds of things, but they're not aligned with the longer-term goals and vision of the organization. Therefore, they're not necessarily providing value to the organization, right? So what this model does, and particularly the framework within this model, is that it allows you to integrate all dimensions of sustainability into your strategic plan. So you don't have two strategies, a sustainability strategy and a business strategy. You have one comprehensive integrated strategy, but it also focuses all of your efforts and aligns them towards what's your vision of the future, what's going to make you successful in the future, which ensures that everything people are doing, running around in your organization, that they're all working on the right stuff, stuff that's adding value to the organization. So I'm sure, a question that many folks out there may have, this is great, but how do we get there and how do we build this? Well, that's where we leverage a proven process to develop a strategy that is sustainable. And that's what we're going to walk through for the remainder of the webinar today, is each of the steps in the process. And as you'll see, this 7-step process is very simple, straightforward, logical, and and it's ordered in a certain way that as you go through each of the steps, it ensures that things are aligned towards towards a common destination in the future. And it's 7 steps, but you may be seeing 8 on the screen. That's because the final block at the bottom there, tactical execution, is what we need to do in order to execute the strategy, because once we've developed it. And just a sort of a precursor to the final webinar, webinar 3, which is going to be focused on tactical execution. That is perhaps one of the most critical components to strategic planning, is actually executing the strategy that you developed, right? So you could develop the best strategy in the world, but if you can't properly execute it, it's not worth very much. So what we're going to learn today is how do we develop a strategy that is sustainable, and then on February 2nd for our final webinar, how do we execute that? So, getting right into the steps, it all centers around this concept of an organization being driven by a purpose that it goes beyond profit maximization, right? So a purpose-driven organization is one that really aims to maximize benefit over profit. And the benefit piece is key here, because you could have a purpose as an organization that's nefarious, let's say. It is not, seeking to maximize benefit, could be seeking to maximize destruction. So when we talk about purpose, we want to make sure that the purpose is focused on a benefit. And more importantly, that an organization is focused on maximizing this benefit over maximizing profit. Sure, profit absolutely is a piece of, what makes an organization sustainable. It's a requirement, it needs to be there. We need to make it. But by focusing on profit alone, we tend to, lose track of what's really important and what's driving that profit. So, by having a purpose for why the organization exists beyond simply maximizing profit, it leads to, tremendous outcomes. And, this isn't some sort of blue sky, hippie sort of idea. This is one that has been proven over and over again by organizations, of which I'll give you an example of a few in a second here, but also, been shown over and over again in many strategies and studies. And I'm just, quoting one by Deloitte, the large consulting, international consulting magnate, that shows that, having a strong sense of purpose behind a strategy really drives, positive outcomes for the organization. So the question becomes is, what is an organizational purpose? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's, really defines why the organization exists and why its work is important, right? So the organization's, your organization doesn't necessarily exist to, maximize profit. That's one of the things that you're trying to do, but it exists to solve a problem or offer a service or make people's lives better. And by focusing on that purpose, you drive the profit. It's not what the organization is doing, but why it does it, and the benefits that comes from doing that. And then that becomes the inspiration for everything else, right? The inspiration for new innovative products and services. It becomes the impetus that drives all the strategies, all the decisions, all the activities. This is why the organization exists. And because we're focused on fulfilling this purpose, it makes us successful and it drives our profit. And as you'll see here in a second, there's many organizations that are purpose-driven organizations that you may not have even been aware of. Google doesn't exist to make, gazillions of dollars. Google has a very simple purpose. Behind the two founders, they had a very simple purpose for building Google, which was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And they've done a fantastic job in fulfilling that purpose. And in doing so, in fulfilling that purpose, they've been extremely profitable and extremely successsul. Method, a cleaning products company. They don't exist to sell the most cleaning products. They don't exist to, make a certain amount of money. They exist, and their purpose is to redesign cleaning products, get all the old contaminants out of them, use recyclable materials, have just a overall better cleaning product. If you ever look at any of their advertising, they don't advertise themselves as a green cleaning product. They advertise themselves as a better cleaning product, and that's what they're there to do. Tom's shoes, if you ever bought in those, they exist not to sell as many shoes as possible, but they exist, their purpose is to transform everyday purchases into a force for good, right? So every pair of Tom's shoes that you buy, someone who can't afford a pair of shoes in the third world gets one because you bought one. A little closer to home for many of you folks is what's not such a little organization anymore, the Little Potato Company. And at the center of their organization is a clear, simple, easy to understand purpose for why the Little Potato Company exists. And that's to save the potato in order to feed the world better. That's why the Little Potato Company exists. And by Angela fulfilling that purpose, CEO and co-founder, been extremely, extremely successful organization. One of the best known purpose-driven organizations out there is organization, which we're all familiar with most likely, Disney, and they have a very simple purpose. It's not to be the best entertainment company in the world. It's not to have the best theme parks. Their purpose, above anything else, is to make people happy, right? So, as you can see, these organizations are all driven at a high level by a purpose beyond maximizing profit, have been extremely successful by doing this. Now, in order to be able to fulfill this profit or purpose, we need to understand where we're going and how we're going to get there to fulfill this purpose, right? So that is the second step of this strategic planning process, which is having a clear vision of the future. Where does this organization need to be in the future? Where do we want it to be? So, when we talk about an organizational vision, it's sort of gotten a bad rap over, the last decade or so because, high-priced consultants have locked executives in a room for 3 days off-site in order to develop a vision of what the organization looks like in the future. Then it goes on this nice, in this nice frame on the wall. Nobody ever looks at it again. Well, that's not what this is about. This is about leaders of an organization really understanding where the organization needs to be in the long term, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and how that's going to help fulfill their purpose. So it's a higher level, longer term aspiration for the organization that really defines what success looks like in the future for that organization. And once you define, you provide a clear picture of what success looks like in the future for the organization, that then becomes the point in which everyone is moving towards. It acts like an organizational compass pointing everyone in the right direction. If people don't have a clear understanding of where the organization is going in the future, how can they ever know if they're working on the right stuff? Or how can you ever be sure, that the projects that are being worked on or the direction that the organization heading is the right direction? That's the purpose that a vision serves. It's not to have this nice statement on the wall. It's really to provide a clear point in the future that everyone is working towards, and that becomes the point of alignment for all goals that people have, for all projects that people are working on, for all initiatives, for all activities across the organization. It's all moving towards being able to achieve that vision, which ultimately will help to fulfill that purpose. And there's a way that you go about in developing this vision. There's a very structured approach to doing this. But having a vision is extremely important of what the organization looks like in the future. Now, if I could just spend a couple seconds here to talk about this. It's very interesting to me because, I see over and over and over again, executives, very smart people running these organizations, that don't have a clear vision for what their organization looks like in the future. And then they wonder and they question why people, don't know what they should be working on, can't take their own direction, need hand-holding. It's because they're not sure where they're going. And, these very successful folks, even in their own lives will have a clear vision of what they want in the future, whether it's for their career or for their personal lives, what type of home they want to have, what size of family, so on and so forth. And everything that they're doing is, in their lives, is moving closer and closer to achieving that vision. But from a business perspective, a lot of times we forget that this very simple concept of providing a clear vision of what we need to look like in the future is so valuable. That being the second step in the process, having a clear vision of what we want to look like in the future, we now need to figure out how we're going to get there, what areas we're going to focus on in order to get there. And, just some examples from close to home here, two Alberta, food-based processors, Alberta-based food processors, some examples of their vision. So, one, is to be North America's most trusted partner for custom-prepared food solutions. Now, again, the vision isn't to be the biggest and the best, to make the most money. The vision is, what does success look like in the future? For this organization, if they feel that if they can be the trusted supplier or partner for all their customers, it will make their business successful. Again, another bakery based out of Alberta, they want to be the customer's #1 choice for baked goods, right? So again, it's not to be the biggest or the best or to make the most money. It's to, what does the organization look like in the future, and what do we need to do in order to get there? So in order to be the most trusted partner, in order to be the customer's first choice, what do we need to focus on? What do we need to do in order to get us there? And that's where the third step in the strategic planning process, comes into play. And this is really where the magic happens. This third step in developing what are called strategic pillars, or some people call them strategic platforms, are really identifying the key areas that the organization must focus on to be successful. And to be successful means to be able to achieve its vision and ultimately fulfill its purpose. So, these strategic pillars replace what some folks might refer to, or traditional strategic planning models refer to as a mission statement or mission statements. How are we going to do? How are we going to achieve our vision? So these strategic pillars, which are essentially the key areas at a high level that the organization must focus on in order to be successful, will replace these mission statements. They describe how the company will achieve a vision. They provide a very clear focus and direction for the organization. If things that we're working on aren't supporting these strategic pillars, they won't be supporting the vision and helping us fulfill the purpose. So therefore, it's not the right things to be working on. So they really help us get down to a more granular level, what our focus should be, what our direction should be. They're also the mechanism for how we embed sustainability into the strategic plan. And you'll see a little bit more on that in a second on how we do that. And also, just as importantly, they provide the foundation for being able to develop KPIs or key performance indicators, which is what we'll be talking about in a few minutes here. So in terms of developing the strategic pillars, which is really where the magic happens, we want to make sure that we've identified the key areas that we need to focus on. Now, it's important to remember here that we're not developing a sustainability strategy. So what we're not doing is we're not developing sustainability pillars. We're developing pillars that are the key areas of focus that are going to make the organization successful. Now, in order to make the organization as successful as possible, in order to optimize the success of an organization, we need to make sure that the things that we're focused on incorporate all dimensions of sustainability. Because if we're not incorporating those dimensions of sustainability, we're not optimizing our success or our performance. So, while some organizations and some strategic planning models will suggest that you develop sustainability pillars, strategy pillars, what we want to do is first decide what we need to focus on in order to be successful, and then make sure that sustainability is included within those pillars. So, for example, here's an example of one way to illustrate strategic pillars. It's in a circle. A lot of people like to use this circle, this wheel. It sort of insinuates continuous improvement. But as you can see here, this organization has 4 strategic pillars: people, growers, community, and operations, in order to achieve their longer-term vision to be the most trusted provider of quality, innovative produce solutions. And as you can see, there's not, 3 pillars here that say people, profit, planet, or social, environmental, economic. What the organization has done is they've taken this model and they've said, what areas do we need to focus on in order to be successful? And they came up with people, growers, community, and operations. Those are the 4 key areas that we need to focus on in order to be successful. Now, for each of these, strategic pillars or platforms, there needs to be a mission statement of what they're trying to achieve when they're referring to people. So in this case, it's a team of engaged, trustworthy people committed to safely achieving the company's vision. When it comes to operations, what do they need to focus on specifically? Well, in this case, it's efficiently delivering safe, quality products with an environmentally sustainable attitude. So as you can see, there's not separate pillars here just for social or economic or environment or people, profit, planet. But what they've done is they've integrated the concepts in all 3 dimensions of sustainability into their strategic pillars. On the people side, they're capturing the social part. Growers are a form of partnership, so that's a social piece. Community, if we could support the success of our customers, that's an economic driver as well. On the operations side, if we can run our business not only safe and efficient, but in an environmentally sustainable manner, we're incorporating that environmental dimension of sustainability in there, right? So, as you can see, the strategic pillars that we're trying to develop here don't necessarily have to be just singularly focused on people, profit, planet, or the dimension of sustainability, but rather let's define what's going to make our company successful, and let's make sure that sustainability is integrated into those areas. There's different ways that you can visually illustrate these strategic pillars. As I said, some people like to use the wheel. Some people like to use the old-fashioned the house model. Some people are using the puzzle piece with the vision at the top. And, what are the pillars, other pieces of the puzzle that need to come together in order to achieve that vision. So there's different ways that you will see organizations visually illustrate their strategic pillars. But as I said, this is where the magic happens, and this is the piece that we really need to take time to make sure that not only we've defined those areas that are critical to success, but that sustainability is integrated into all those areas. With those areas, those strategic pillars set up, we need to set our financial objectives, of course. As I said before, it's not all about profit, but that's certainly a piece of it. So the financial objective, step 4, is really the organization's financial performance indicators. And I will always look at 3 high-level drivers, which is revenue, gross margin, and overhead. You control those 3, then you control profit, right? And these things will be updated very regularly. They will be updated, potentially even quarterly, maybe even, more regularly than that. But unlike key performance indicators, which we're going to talk about in a second, these financial performance indicators are updated more regularly. They're also critical because they guide the development of goals that you'll see later on in the process. So we need to make sure all the goals we set in the organization, when we achieve those goals, they will translate into achieving our financial objectives. I see it over and over again where I go into organizations, they set goals for the organization, they set financial objectives for the organization, and even if they achieve 100% of their goals, they can still not achieve their financial objectives because they weren't aligned properly. Right? So what this model does is to make sure that once you've set your financial objectives, you can then use that as a guide to set all your other goals so everything is aligned properly. And again, the focus shouldn't be necessarily on the profit, but on the profit drivers themselves. And the profit drivers are going to be those strategic pillars. Once the financial performance indicators are set up, we need to set up a set of key performance indicators that's going to measure the overall health and performance of the organization outside of the financial side of it. And what these are, they're high-level indicators that measure performance for each of the pillars. So you may have 3 or 4 or 5 strategic pillars, as we saw. Well, if our goal is to have an engaged group of people who are trustworthy and dependable, how are we going to measure that? What's going to tell us whether we're getting closer to achieving that mission statement for that pillar or whether we're getting further away from it, right? How do we know whether we're moving the needle in each of those areas? Well, the only way to know is to set up a way to measure it, and we call these key performance indicators. These tend to stay static over time. They tend not to change unless the strategic pillars change. They tend to be very outcome or lagging based. They're not leading indicators, so they tell us results. And as I was saying before, they're aligned to the financial objectives, and they become the very mechanism for which we set goals. So once we understand what the measurement is going to be for performance, we can then go and set up what goals we want for each of those KPIs or measurements under each pillar, right? So, just to sort of, start to bring everything together here, we have an ultimate purpose that we're trying to fulfill. We're going to get there by achieving our vision. In order to achieve our vision, we have to focus on certain areas, which we're calling strategic pillars. Once we know those areas that we're going to focus on, we set our financial objectives, and then we set KPIs to measure whether we're moving the needle in each of those strategic pillars. And once we know what the measurement is, we can then go and set the goal. Right? So, setting a goal does a number of things. First thing that does is it really sets a level of expectation with regards to employee performance, right? What do I need to achieve? It becomes very clear. This is also a critical mechanism for creating accountability. If you have clear goals in place, you can, hold people accountable to achieving those goals. If you don't have goals in place or very squishy goals in place, it becomes very difficult to hold people accountable to things. If you tell people simply to do better, well, what does better mean, right? Well, if you define better and set a goal of an improvement of 5.7%, it's very clear what better is, and you can hold people accountable to 5.7%, but you can't hold them accountable to better, right? So setting these goals becomes that critical mechanism for creating accountability. And of course, as I said before, we really want to align those to our financial objectives to make sure that if we achieve our goals, that we'll also achieve our financial objectives. They can be, sometimes they can be softer to start, to develop a baseline or, to set up, or maybe a goal could even be to set a goal. But over time, they really need to move towards hard goals, improve by 10%, reduce by 7%, sell 100 more, bring injuries down to 0, so on and so forth. And this is what really becomes the impetus for all action. With goals set, this is really what's going to drive action, right? We know what we need to achieve. Now we need to go and achieve it. Now, one of the tools that the strategic planning model provides is a company dashboard. This dashboard is just like a dashboard in your vehicle. It tells you all the critical information you need to know about your organization, how fast you're moving, whether you're performing, whether there's any issues or not. So again, what are your pillars? What are my KPIs to measure progress in those pillars? Where am I at now? What is my goal? And, what's the gap between where I'm at and where I want to be? And, once we can figure out what the gap is between where we are and where we want to be. And to this point, we know we're all aligned because everything aligns back up to the vision and ultimately the purpose. We can then figure out all the small little programs and initiatives that we need to put in place that will drive action in order to achieve the goals that we've put in place, right? So, these programs and initiatives are really specifically designed to help achieve the goals that were set for each of the KPIs that will move the needle on the strategic pillars on trying to get closer to achieving the mission for those strategic pillars, which brings us closer to achieving our vision, which ultimately will help us to fulfill our purpose. So as you can see, everything is aligned here. Once these programs or initiatives are developed, because they're aligned all the way through, we know that the people that are working on these programs and initiatives are working on the right stuff. Again, a lot of times you go in organizations and everyone's busy running around like crazy, but are they working on the right stuff? A lot of the times no, because it's not aligned all the way through. But by following this model, this process, it ensures that all the programs and initiatives you put in place, and therefore everything that everybody's working on, is the right stuff. Now, these programs and initiatives are really improvements in the short term that will become the standard for how things are done in the longer term, right? So, an initiative, may be to improve, on the environmental side, energy efficiency or something like that, by changing a way a process is done or a machine that is used, or so on and so forth. Well, that's an improvement. We then will embed that into a standard operating procedure or a GMP or something like that, and that becomes the norm for how we do things going forward. That's sort of how we lock that in. And of course, this is where we leverage all of those continuous improvement tools, processes, and techniques, to help us, identify the right programs, identify the right initiatives, more importantly, help us to achieve those goals. So, a lot of times, organizations really just jump into this continuous improvement stuff without having a longer-term strategy in place, to support these continuous improvement initiatives. So they might spend a lot of time on a continuous improvement initiative, but it's not aligned to their overall strategy. There's no long-term, vision for it, and therefore the benefits that are realized from their continuous improvement efforts, are not optimized. So, what this model does is, again, allows you not only to integrate sustainability, but make sure that everything that you're doing, is the right stuff and aligned to, to a longer-term vision of the future. So, what this strategic plan really culminates in is a bunch of little action items that, when completed, will help to fulfill these programs in order to achieve the goals and ultimately lead us to achieving our vision and fulfilling our purpose. Once we've got the strategy set up, as I had mentioned, the next critical component is really to be able to execute this strategy. And this is really where, the management of the strategy and driving the strategy forward really comes into play. You talk to many folks, and arguably, this is the most critical component to the overall strategy and overall strategic planning process. As I said, you could have the greatest strategy in the world, but if you can't execute it, it's of little value, right? This focuses both on hard management tools, hard tools, but also soft aspects. Soft aspects like culture and people and leadership and communication, and those things, are all key in order to be able to, specifically execute or, successfully execute a strategy. And typically, more often than not, it's really driven by the executives and senior management within the organization. Of course, everyone plays a role in strategy execution, but at a higher level, it's really driven by the senior management and executive team there. So, as you can see, little infographic there. In order to have success, you can't just have a strategy. You have to have the strategy and execution, and that's what really drives success. And that's really what the third and final webinar is going to be on. Is with an understanding of how to develop a strategy, and particularly one that integrates all dimensions of sustainability to make sure we're not leaving anything on the table, and is focused and aligned towards a common vision of the future that's all based on a higher level purpose beyond profit maximization. Once we understand that, how do we execute that, right? So that's what we'll be getting into the third and final webinar, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second. But we're getting right down to the 45-minute mark here. So at this point, I'll open it up for some Q&A if anyone has some questions out there.
Okay, thanks, Brett. A few people have been asking if they will be able to get a copy of this presentation.
Yes, absolutely. A copy of the presentation will be available, and I also believe, Matt, that the webinar will be posted online as well, won't it?
Yes, we are recording. Okay, another question. So where do values fit into this whole thing?
Yeah, so great question. A lot of people, ask this question: where do values fit in this whole picture? Because a lot of times in the strategic planning process, you see values as a big component of it. Values are a piece of this. Values are really, sort of how an organization is going to behave as they move forward to execute their strategic plan, right? So, values are not necessarily part of the strategic plan per se in developing the strategy. It's a separate sort of piece that the organization needs to sit down and look at to say, hey, we've got a strategy in place. We know where we're going. Let's make sure that we behave properly on the path or on the journey towards getting there, right? So, we may have a strategy to be the most trusted provider, or to be, the number one choice, but we're not going to, pillage and steal in order to get there. We're going to be honest, we're going to be trustworthy, so on and so forth. So in terms of values, it's sort of, are almost like a sidebar. I hate to use that terminology because they're certainly important, but they're not necessarily part of the strategic plan itself. It's, how are we going to behave in order to execute the strategic plan?
Okay, great. Another question. So the model that you presented, can you just use it to improve an existing strategic plan, or does it have to be used on its own?
Yeah, another good question. I get this one all the time as well. Working with organizations, they're afraid that by following, this model, which is really just an innovation of existing models like the Rockefeller habits and balanced scorecard and so on and so forth to ensure that sustainability is integrated into it. But you don't need to follow it from start to finish. If there's an existing strategic plan in place, for example, if you've developed a strategic plan where you have some key focus areas, you can use this model in step 3 just to make sure that you've integrated sustainability into all your key focus areas. Maybe you have a strategic plan, but you don't have KPIs in place. Maybe you have strategic pillars, but you don't have KPIs in place for those strategic pillars. So you can use, step 4 or step 5 in this, which is, developing those KPIs. So to answer the question, no, you don't need to follow from start to finish. You can sort of, it's sort of set up in a modular way that if there's a component that you're missing, that you can just focus on that module or that component. So it's very flexible and dynamic, and I think that's been part of the success of the model itself.
Okay, great. That seems to be all the questions do we have. Do you have any parting thoughts?
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that I think I mentioned many times throughout today's webinar that the final webinar in the series is really focused on the execution of the strategy. So it's one thing, as I said, to be able to develop a strategy. It's another thing to be able to execute it. So to me, this is a super valuable third and final webinar in the series where we're going to talk about what are the components to strategy execution. How do we build accountability? How do we drive culture? How do we get people engaged? How do we communicate this strategic plan across the organization so that everyone's on the same page as us? We're really going to look at those pieces there. And what we're also going to look at are some tools to help you execute the strategy. So I've taken a couple of snapshots and put them on the slide there, as you can see. There's some great templates that are available. There's strategic roadmaps. There's Excel sheets that have action plans that you'll be able to learn about. And the great thing is not only are you going to be able to see and learn about these tools, but as a registrant for the third and final webinar, you will also be sent a no-cost copy of these tools and templates for your use. So some great value there. For folks that aren't aware, the next webinar, the final webinar in the series, will be Tuesday, February 2nd, again at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So if you haven't registered, encourage you to do so as soon as possible. There's a link here on the slide deck, and you can also get that link from the website, and we encourage you to really go ahead and register for that. It's going to be some great value and a great recap to the whole webinar series. So that's
great.
about it for me, Matt. So.
Just to follow up with that, another way to register is from the Agriculture and Forestry homepage. There is a link on there for webinars, and it's listed there, a direct link to register. So that's it for today's webinar. I will thank Brett for taking the time to share with us today, and thank you as well to all the attendees for logging in. Have a great day, and that's it.
Thank you, everyone.